Kovrin Abandoned Hospital is the most famous abandoned object in the post-Soviet space. It is a derelict that has been featured by the most popular Russian bloggers of industrial tourism topics. I will tell you about the history of this building, and at the end of the video, I will show an alternative version of the Kovrinskaya Hospital. It's interesting, you'll like it. The history of this object began in 1979, when in the north of Moscow decided to build a huge medical complex for 1,300 beds, consisting of many buildings, and with a helipad on the roof. Soon, a suitable site was found near the Kovrino railway station, on the territory of Grachevsky Park, which was a park near the Kovrino estate, which was built in the 1840s. During the Battle of Moscow, a hospital for severely wounded soldiers was located here. The dead were buried right in the adjacent park. In 1980, part of the park was demolished, and construction of a huge 11-story building in brutalist architectural style began on this territory. The building consisting of many buildings. The three-beam shape with bifurcation at the ends was not designed by chance. It was believed that this very shape would make the building as functional as possible, and the fact that the building from the height resembled a sign of chemical danger was accidental. But thanks to this, it received its most famous nickname, Umbrella, by analogy with the laboratory in the computer game Resident Evil. Construction lasted until 1985 and was 80% complete, but construction was frozen because the building began to subside underground and the basement flooded with water. The reason for this was a small river, practically a brook, which was hidden in the collectors and completely failed to take this fact into account when designing the building. Soon the financial crisis began in the USSR, and in the early 90s, the construction was finally abandoned. In the 90s began a series of terrible events associated with the hospital. A maniac began to operate in this abandoned building. People were regularly killed on the territory of the hospital. Soon a lot of urban legends appeared around the building. The most famous one, that the hospital could not be completed because the souls of those buried nearby did not allow it. The second legend, about the Satanist sect, Nemestor, that took over the building. The legend says that they sacrificed people on the territory of the hospital. And later the building was surrounded by special forces and the Satanists had to flee to the basement, where they remained forever walled up. The hospital was indeed painted with pentagrams and inverted crosses. Animal corpses, mostly cats and dogs, were found on its territory, but there is no official confirmation of the existence of the Nemestor sect. Throughout the 2000s, accidents with thrill-seekers continued on the hospital's territory. Crimes were committed here. In 2009, the Moscow authorities finally paid attention to this place. It was surrounded with barbed wire and put guards. But since the territory was huge and there was only one guard post, it was quite easy to get into the building. In the age of the internet, the building has become incredibly popular among fans of stalker themes. Top bloggers started coming here to shoot videos. In 2016, the Moscow authorities decided to get rid of this headache. It was announced that the hospital building is not subject to reconstruction and will soon be demolished. Preparatory work was delayed because the building was located near residential buildings, and it was impossible to dismantle it with an explosion. The demolition of the hospital began in the fall of 2018. Special equipment was involved, excavators, destroyers, which bit off small pieces of concrete from the building. In just a few months, the huge building was completely dismantled. Only the basement remained. Many people were sure that a new medical complex would be built in place of the demolished Kovrinskaya Hospital, but soon it became obvious that another typical high-rise residential complex would be built there. Residents of the neighborhood were categorically against it and offered to restore a park, a pond, build a skating rink, a library and other infrastructure facilities in this place. But the authorities decided otherwise. This is the end of the story of the most famous long construction project in the former Soviet Union. The hospital, which was supposed to save human lives, became a murderous abandoned building that took more than a dozen human lives. But I made a visualization of this hospital especially for this video to show how it would look like if it was completed. And on this channel, there are many projects with alternative scenarios of cities, interesting objects, and even entire countries. I recommend subscribing, and also your activity under the video will help the development of the channel.